All right, everyone. Welcome back to the show. Thanks for tuning in today. This is Mo, the host of the More Sibyl podcast. And today I have someone who I met recently on another podcast. So shout out to Chul of the Africana Women's Podcast. Myself and this person who is a guest today, we were on a panel talking about education in Africa and the merits and demerits of studying abroad and the impact it has on Africa with the brain drain and all that kind of fancy stuff. And I loved what they were all about. And I asked them right away, hey, would you like to come on the podcast? And she was like, yes, I would love to. And the rest, as I say, is history. So who's she? She's a founder and CEO of Moon Education, which is a small charity working with very bright but financially disadvantaged young Zambians. Zambia is a country in Africa. She also serves on the executive committee of HALI Access Network. She's passionate, and when I say passionate, it kind of oozes every time she talks about her work. You can tell that she's really passionate about education and also creating equitable access to universities so that young Africans can fulfill their academic potential and become the change maker the continent needs. She lives in the UK, however, with her husband and her dog, Alfie, and she has 3 grown sons. Everyone, please join me in welcoming Miss Helen Leale Greene to the podcast. Hi, Helen.
Hi, Mo. Thank you very much for having me on the podcast. I'm very happy to be here.
I'm very, very happy to have you as well. So let's just start with the basic, boring, not so boring stuff. I know for those that are listening, probably rolling their eyes, probably going to ask that question, but it's very important to know how people got started, on their mission. So just tell us a little bit more about you and, yeah.
Okay. So, I started off, I studied accountancy at university, my undergraduate, and I became an accountant. I worked for PwC in consultancy for 15 years. And then life just changed for me. I had 3 young boys and they needed my time a bit more, but also my priorities started to change and my passions started to change. And so I did a little bit of volunteering and I went back to uni and studied for a master's in international development and education. And so I was a trustee of a charity in the UK that helped disadvantaged young people from developing countries around the world, brought them here to do the IB and then helped them to access university. And my role, although I was a trustee, I became a volunteer and I was helping them to access university places. One of my young students was Zambian, and he said that he thought I could make more impact in Zambia and invited me to Zambia. I stayed with his family in one of the compounds or shanty towns in Lusaka. Funny story is that the first night I was there, it was getting later and I was thinking, I'm not sure where I'm going to be sleeping tonight. And nobody's going to tell me either. And then in the end, I said, look, where will I sleep? Where do I need to put my things? And my choices were basically on the floor or in bed with his grandmother. So I shared a bed with his grandmother. And after 4 days, we became very close friends. put the world to right.
It doesn't get closer than that, literally. Did they give you their last name at the end of the trip? Just kidding.
And that's how we got started. Justin, my student, he introduced me to a couple of NGOs and some schools, and together we put on some workshops for teachers and students and came up with a very simple, really, really tiny program by selecting 2 students and thinking that we could work with them. That's probably enough to answer that question for now.
There's so much to tease out of that. I think the first thing that kind of picked everything you said was really good. Thanks for your response. But let me walking back to what you said, and I think it's something that we can draw as a lesson. How you pivoted from being an accountant to where you are right now. It came from volunteering, pouring yourself in the service of others. I like the third guest mentioning that, and I don't think we give volunteering enough credit. That sometimes you might need that, not like selfishly, right? But you never know. You just never know, right?
Yeah, I think I was at a pivotal stage in my life, and I knew I wanted to do something different. I knew I wanted to do something in the education space, and I had an idea that it would be with foreign students in some way. I also took a course teaching English as a foreign language, a very, very short course, but I thought at least it will give me some skills. I had a lot of skills and expertise, but not necessarily the right ones. And I really had to find my way into it. And I tried a number of different charities, and while they were very good charities and doing commendable work, it took me a while to find the right one as well. So I think, even if you do volunteering, it's not always the first one that hits the sweet spot. You might have to try a number of different charities to get to the right place and to volunteer for the one that really means something to you.
So what year was it that you went to Zambia?
Oh, the first year was 2015.
How many times have you been?
Oh, I go twice a year for a month each time. Ooh, so I spend a reasonable amount of time there.
Have you picked up any of the languages?
Just odd words, to be honest. The thing that's really difficult for me is that every time I master a few words in one language and think I'm making progress, then someone says, oh, but you need to know it in Nyanja, or you need to know it in Bemba or Tonga. Or our local language where we are is Lenje. And so it just becomes really difficult. So I quite like learning languages, and I feel that I've really copped out of this one. But
So for me, I find that sometimes it's the cuss words you learn faster. Or the expletive words, Anyways, so Zambia, right? It's a long way from where you grew up in the UK. Before you ever ventured into, even traveling there, what was your perception about Africa as a whole, or maybe even Zambia? And then on going there and interacting with people and your mission thus far, what are some, would you say your perception of it has been, has it been like a match between what you thought, your imagination and your expectation? And if there are gaps in between, then what was something that kind of blew your mind going in, and all the experience you brought into this so far? I don't know if that question made sense. I feel like I staggered a little bit about. Okay. You're very generous. Thank you.
So I think, I was lucky that I'd been working with a number of African students from Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Uganda. And I'd been working as a trustee and volunteer at this charity. So I'd been there for about 7 years altogether. And so I'd got to know their stories really well. I knew a lot about their backgrounds. And I could envisage life as it was for them through not only their stories, but from reading and but mainly novels rather than academic work, and from films and things. So I had this picture. I did have a picture in mind. I think when I got there, it was the small details that somehow shocked me. So things like the fact that people can't afford to buy salt for their meals, so they buy them in these tiny little wrappers of paper, enough just for that meal. And that to me really helped me to understand how poor people are, that they wanted to provide, especially it was my first night, wanting to provide the first meal, and they had to go out and it was difficult for them to be able to afford that bit of salt to make the meal tasty. Like
sizzling?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And I think that's quite common. When I came back to talk to my students about it, they said, oh, yes, we all do that. And it's the same with cooking oil. They'll go and buy from the shop just enough cooking oil for that meal. And
oh, wow. Is that Zambia? Because I'm as an African, that's kind of mind blowing for me. I mean, I get like meats and, other enhancements you put in food, but salt, I mean, it's shocking for me as an African, actually. Yeah.
But it was those little details, I think.
Yeah.
I think I was made very welcome everywhere I went, but sometimes that welcome could be a bit overwhelming. People wanted to touch me and feel my skin and my hair, and I know that a lot of Africans say that when they go to the West, especially if they've got an afro, they hate it, that people want to touch their hair. But it's the same sort of thing, and you'd feel a bit overcrowded by people. And people coming up to me say, "Please, will you marry us?" One person. It made me realise somehow they felt that I could save them, and that was definitely what I was there to do.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So, I mean, the panel you and I were part of, and I don't want to give too much away because, Chulo, I don't think at the time of this recording has released that episode yet. But you and I went into deep lengths about just education in on the continent as a whole, and we both sit on different sides of the spectrum. I being someone who studied in an African university before making my way over here and going to grad school in the US, and now I'm an educator in the US. But of course, there's some similarities there in the sense that we have some form of experiences with the continent as a whole. What would you say are some of the opportunities? Let's talk about the good part first, like the strengths of education in Africa, that from your virtue of just exploring the part of the continent you've explored, what are some strengths that stand out to you in the people you've encountered?
In education, I think there's a lot more going on in education, in higher education, than people imagine. So in Zambia, I've been connected to a really interesting professor of physics and his wife, who's a senior lecturer of maths at University of Zambia. And he's very interested in solar power and has been researching not just solar power, but details about making batteries and all the components that go into making batteries. He's been quite instrumental in doing that within Zambia. His wife produces a lot of the data as a maths lecturer, the data that gives Zambia a voice in the climate change debate. And because Zambia doesn't have these supercomputers, she's linked with the University of Cape Town so that they process a lot of the data. This is my understanding. And that gives Zambia a voice within the whole climate change debates that are going on. And I find that really fascinating, and the fact that this sort of leading edge work is taking place. And there's so many people that have no idea that happens. I think they've got a very negative view of education. I think also on the continent there are some very good universities, and some of our students go to universities such as Ashesi University in Ghana and United States International University, USIU, in Kenya. They're two small liberal arts style universities, and they're absolutely amazing universities, and they produce very good students. And what I really like about them is most of the students that go there are African, but the students are taught ethical leadership skills while they're there, and how to problem solve some of the challenges that they see around them in Africa. And I really appreciate those sorts of education opportunities, and there is funding that goes with that, which really helps students access those universities. Thank you. Thanks for highlighting that, because I guess I
very much agree with you that we have so much manpower that has been harnessed, but we still have, there's a lot of opportunities to keep harnessing those manpower. And then also even talking about some of the universities and other educational, I guess the universities, highlighting some examples of the ones that you found that have been very amazing. Now let's, because the next wave of conversation now is going to be focusing on your charity work, your platform actually called Our Moon. And we'll just, so I know with the HALI network, that you highlighted earlier on, it's probably like similar in the sense that you provide some form of assistance, right, to high achieving low income students to access international higher education opportunities. Now, for those who might be thinking that when you take people from, like, take for example, you identify this high, achiever individual who is indigent, needs some form of support to be able to make it through university. You take them from there and you maybe send them abroad. They might not likely come back home. What would you say to the critic that says, oh, this is just another form of brain drain? How would you address that question?
When we select our students, we specifically look for students who have an interest in using their education to combat some of the challenges that they see in their communities. I think starting with that and working with them on those issues helps to keep that at the forefront of their minds, at least before they go to university. Our program runs for 18 months to 2 years, depending on when they go to university. And the first year is full-time on site with us. And they undertake a project where they have to write a research paper on a global issue as they see it within Zambia and relate it to the sort of studies that they might want to do at university. So again, that helps them to focus on problem solving and some of the challenges that they see and how they can be part of that community of change makers. What else do we do? Oh, yes. So we organise internships for the students before they go off to university. So this is in their second year with us. And they do 3 to 4 months with, at the moment, we're mainly with some of the accounting firms, including my alma mater, and also some NGOs that operate in Zambia. And the reason for doing that is to help them develop some employability skills. So that's quite an important part of it. But it's also to help them understand that there are professional organisations that offer meaningful work and dignified work in Zambia. And I think especially because of the background our students come from, they've never seen that really before. And I think that's a really important thing to lay down as a foundation. It is safe to come back, and there are opportunities when they come back. We will also help students while they're at university. If they've got a summer that they've got free, for instance, we will help them to return and help them to get those internship opportunities as well.
Okay. Thank you for that. Very much appreciated. Now, your organization again, Almond, what year was it started again? Was it 2017?
2015.
2015, sorry. I knew I was going to mess that up. How many beneficiaries have you had so far? That's my first question. Yeah. And of those people, how many of them do you guys track them longitudinally to see the impact, like almost like the return on investments as far as investing back in the motherland?
So we started really small. If you remember, I said we had 2 students.
Yes.
We've had about 40 people now go through that main program. There are other people that we help along the way, but through our Young Leaders program, there are about 40 students. As you can imagine, it's 2 years to do our program. They go off to university. That's 6 years. So we haven't had very many students graduate yet. Now, but we're coming up to a number that are graduating. So I think one of the things that, in fact, it was one of my alums said to me, what is my ideal trajectory for an Our Moon student, given that I want them to be contributing back. And it took me aback, and it took me a while to really think of an answer. And it made me realise that I don't have an ideal trajectory for a student. I don't think that's fair to impose that on them. So one of our students that, one of our first students to graduate, she's graduated in civil engineering from Edinburgh University, and she's just been awarded the Rhodes Scholarship to go and study at university. Yeah. And so she's going to do a PhD in civil engineering, and she's looking at climate change and things around that, and how civil engineering can impact or reduce the impact of climate change, I should say. So I feel that she is at least making a difference in the world in what she wants to study, and she does have the focus. Also, while she was at uni, she worked on a couple of big projects. One was on water in the Sahara, and the other one was on housing, cheap housing, but improved housing in Madagascar to reduce deaths and people losing their homes during the cyclone season. So that, when I hear stories like that about my students, that's the sort of thing that makes me very happy. Another student he's at Cornell University, and at the end of his first year, he won the Davis Project for Peace Prize and won $10,000 to do a project in Zambia. So even though he's only 1 year into his degree course, he's already making an impact. And what he did was he built a classroom and computer lab in a rural primary school, and to make sure that much younger children are getting access to computers and technology. And that's one of the things that he's really passionate about doing. And it was his first step towards making that impact. So yes, I do track my students. I'm in touch with them both formally and informally. And it makes me very, very happy when I hear those sorts of stories of things that they're doing.
Okay. Now, do you know how many of them have been able to go back, of those 40 students?
To return home at the end of their degrees. I should have that number off the top of my head.
Just like an educated, no pun intended, educated guess would also work.
I think there's only about 5 that have graduated and 3 are home.
Okay. Yeah. That's good. But as far as your program is concerned, because I know that long term, there's so many things they can use that for, right? Mm-hmm. And a life has been changed. But what does success look like? How do you guys, how do you operationally define a successful program versus a successful outcome in a participant versus a not so successful outcome in a particular person?
I suppose the students and alums that I see as being most successful are those that always think about what they're doing in relation to how they're improving things at home. So a less successful outcome would be someone, I guess, who says, oh, well, I can go and work on Wall Street or in the City of London and do a job for a while and earn a lot of money. I think that worries a little bit, because once it's quite difficult to decide that you're not going to do that anymore.
Yeah.
But I have had alums from my previous organisation, so where I was a trustee, who have done that. They've worked for 2 or 3 years and then decided, right, I'm going to go back to university first and bridge my journey back to my country.
I see. And most of how do you get funded as well? Because this is, as I can imagine, is quite capital intensive. Where does your funding come from?
A real variety of sources. So that's what I was working on today, was our budget.
Fun stuff, huh?
So we do a variety of things. So we put on events. And last week we had an event at the Zambia High Commission, which was really successful. It was a cocktail party, quite a smart event, but not overly posh. And it was very much for fundraising. So we had a raffle, an auction, and then people could give donations to buy bricks towards a building that we're putting up in Zambia. So that's one way we can do it. And we've had both physical events and also virtual events that we've done. We go out to trusts and foundations to apply for grants. We have some individual donors who donate money. Last week it ended Tuesday this week, was the Big Give Christmas Challenge, which is a UK Christmas challenge that charities participate in, where there's an opportunity for match funding. And so we wrote to all our donors, for instance, and asked them if they would like to make a donation and have their donations matched. So we do those sorts of things. We have a few corporate relationships, which partly for fundraising and partly for internship purposes. And we have a very small number of regular donors, and that's an area that we hope to grow.
Well, I imagine that's like an ongoing, never-ending.
Absolutely.
It doesn't sound fun, but you're doing it. Now, as an advocate for equal education access, which I think is very laudable, what is the mindset among the Africans you've encountered regarding this? Have you faced some resistance, or are people, for the most part of it, embracing what you're doing?
For attending our program?
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of applications, and we have an online portal, and we ask people to write some essay questions. One of the barriers we have to start with is that the Zambian education system goes up to Zambian grade 12, but if it was the equivalent in the UK, that would be to age 16, and there is no 16 to 18 years provision in Zambia. But the students think they finished school and are ready to go to university. And I don't feel that they're ready to go to university abroad. So some of them feel, well, why should I give up 18 months to study and get involved in this program when I think I've already left school and I don't need to do anything else to study to get to university? So there's changing that mindset and saying, well, actually there is that 2-year gap. And there's also a year to 2 years gap in Zambia where those same students do nothing. They're not eligible to apply for loans for university until they've been out of school for some time. So fill that gap constructively and come and join our program is what I say. So that's the first thing. But once they get over that and they see that this, that what we're helping them with is not only to help them at university, but also beyond university, then I think then we're fine. I don't think there are many other challenges in getting people to sign up for our program. People don't pay. We fully fund the program. We don't expect any contributions from our students because we know that they're from families that can't afford it. So there aren't financial barriers to attending our program. And there are lots of upsides. We've got a 100% record of getting our students into universities around the world, including African universities. So we're not talking about students.
Not just abroad,
or not just overseas.
But even in Africa, yeah. So it seems that it's been widely accepted, but you might run into some challenges that might be kind of like the difference you give with the schooling system in Zambia versus the UK. How do you decide who goes to what university? Do the students make a preference? I imagine if I was one feeling as a 16-year-old person or 17-year-old, I probably want to go abroad. How do you decide who stays in Africa and who, gets sent abroad?
Right. It's not really my decision because the university selects.
Has
so they have to apply for their places. We don't provide funding, and the universities have to admit them. So it's extremely competitive for them. So the first thing is that I have lists of universities that can offer full financial aid or scholarships. And so the students don't apply to any universities where I don't think there's the chance of full aid. So very few apply to the UK. We've had some at Edinburgh University because they were funded by MasterCard and there was a specific programme to do that. But we don't work with UK universities at undergrad level. It's different at master's level, and there are lots of opportunities at master's level.
Okay.
So the first thing that we work is the timeline is that American universities open applications first. So most of our students will apply to some American universities, and I limit them to 6 universities, and we work together with my list, and they do some research, and we look at the sorts of courses that they might want to study, and then decide from there which ones they're going to apply to. They'll attend webinars from the universities. I'll organise some talks from some of the universities. So there's different connections that they gain with those universities. Then the African universities and other universities they apply to tend to open after Christmas. So while they're waiting for their results from the American universities, they also then can be applying to African universities. And again, it depends on what they want to study, is which African universities. And there's a university in India where we have quite a few students, and one in Costa Rica as well. But it depends on what they want to study.
Okay. Now, thanks for that, by the way. Thanks for making that clear, that they have to be the ones to apply, and then your role in that sense is more like support. Now, for students who stay in African countries or travel abroad, I imagine they have different needs. And as someone who studied abroad, I know that one big thing that I really needed while I was in grad school was access to mental health services. To kind of help me with coping and all that. What would you say are some of the biggest challenges of your students who make it to the other side of the ocean? And is that something your foundation is geared to support, or you just refer them to external sources? For example, mental health. You could have other unique challenges, but I just threw that out there.
I think mental health is probably one of the biggest issues. And I think so. While they're on our program, we do have a couple of psychotherapists that offer counselling to our students, and they also talk in group sessions about the sort of work that they do. And we try to help students understand that it's not a sign of weakness to ask for that help, because that is definitely something that most of our students, when they come to us, would find very difficult to talk about. So we do talk a lot about mental health, and those who need it can access a psychotherapist while they're on our program. Once they're at university, there are 1 or 2 that continue to be supported by our counsellors, but mostly the issues come up while they're at university. And it's quite difficult for us to understand what those issues are. But what we hope is that we've created a situation where that they will go out and ask for help within their universities. The American universities they go to are all do provide that support service if they're asked, if they go and ask for it, and the other universities they go to as well. There's a lot of support for them. But they do need to understand that they have to ask for it, and that can be difficult. I think one of the other big issues that our students face is being asked constantly for money to come from home. There's an assumption that
flat taxes,
that they're very well off because they're a student abroad, and of course, they're students. They're not well off. they usually have to work a campus job and various things to have enough money for themselves to make the most of their opportunity there. So that's one of the challenges. And we talk to them about that. And even when they're doing their internships in Zambia, I prepare them for the fact that their parents will see, or their families will see them earning money and expect them to be able to contribute suddenly to the family. And I try to get them to focus on doing just one thing. So when they're at university, if they can help to support one of their siblings or a cousin into school, then, or play for their uniforms or something to enable them to be in school, then that's great. Their families shouldn't expect more of them than that. Oh, and then another pressure is that they're under is to stay abroad, because they can continue to send more money home. So that's even when students really want to come home, and their parents don't get it. They say, "Why would you want to come back here?" So there are a few different things that we work with them on and try and help them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. I mean, I agree with you. Mental health is very, very important. And what you've described, I can very much relate to it. Like the pressure of whether to stay behind or go back home, and the responsibilities that come with, being abroad and those perceptions. Now, one of the things that I've seen, one of the, I guess, popular perception is how sometimes we go into volunteering or even trying to help to correct something without having an appreciation of the local context. In what way would you say your foundation has been quite inclusive in learning a lot from Zambians as a form of continuous improvement or even quality control of your program to be sure that it's culturally sensitive to the needs and it grows accordingly to the needs of Zambians?
That's a really good question. So I mentioned Justin right at the start of our
and his
call.
Grandmother, yes.
So Justin, yes, and so I guess my answer revolves around Justin. So he went off to study at UBC in Canada, and when he returned, he said that he wanted to stay involved with Our Moon, and he works full time for Our Moon. He lives on site. He manages and runs the programs, and I am involved in the programs as well, but very much as part of the tutor team. And he leads what happens in Zambia, and the areas that he tutors the students in is all about being African, being proud of being African, what it means, their identities. So he covers a lot of that discussion and debate. That wouldn't be appropriate for me to have with them in the same way.
In case our listeners don't know, she's not Zambian by birth.
No, from so Justin's the person that keeps us sort of true to being African, and he has very Pan-African views. I wouldn't say he's got specifically Zambian views. He's very much a Pan-African, so that's really the main way that I would say that we continue to learn and grow through that. The HALI Access Network is the other way that I learn a lot from working with my colleagues through the HALI Access Network, a lot of whom are African, and working with African students.
Thank you for answering that. I had a follow-up to that, but I want to quickly ask this question before I did my follow-up. Are there plans in the future to perhaps expand your program to other African countries?
No, not really. There's a lot of work to do in Zambia, and I think we're more likely to expand. We'd like to expand our student numbers, but also expand to other areas. I think there's a big need at various stages of people's education for help and support. We get a lot of applicants who don't make the grade levels to do our program, but would still be really good community change makers. And we want to I think we would want to try and support those young people as well in some way with a different sort of program. And I think through the HALI Access Network, I learn from the HALI Access Network, but I try and give to that organisation as well. And there are other organisations different from Our Moon, but with a similar objective of helping young people access.
Okay. The follow-up question I had to that one on local context would be this. What would be your response to anyone who thinks, well, this is yet another white person trying to fix Africa's problems? Have you encountered a situation like this? If you did, how would you handle this if you haven't?
I must say I haven't specifically, and I'm not very aware of it as a potential issue. So I'm very aware of it. I think my answer would come back to the fact that Justin's very involved in all the decisions we make about how we run the program, and I think that's just so fundamentally important. I wouldn't want to make decisions. I mean, there's so many things that I'll say to him, should we do this? And he'll say, don't be ridiculous, and put me right very quickly, and that it wouldn't work, or that it's not the right thing to do. So I think having someone like him is really helpful. And we do work very well as a team, making those sorts of decisions. So I think, yes, there are definitely people that might see me as sort of some white saviour, but at the end of the day, I think I've satisfied myself that we're not working in that way. But I have had the discussion with my students because, especially when we were starting out with our own site and expecting young people to come to us, I asked them what it was that made their parents allow them to come without really knowing very much about us. And they said, there was a white involved. That's terrible. A white woman being involved be better than someone else being involved, and we've had that discussion, but somehow that seemed to legitimise it more, which I found quite sad. And so I try and have those open discussions with the students to put them right and to show them that, certainly not all white people are good.
People are people regardless
anyway.
We have good sides and bad sides, across all board. Oh my!
And actually, the strength is having Justin there, running the programs, because I couldn't do anything that I do without.
Okay, well, shout out to Justin. It seems like he's like the true north and one of the important people that you have on board to kind of keep almost like perfecting your hustle and making sure that you guys are doing it in a very culturally appropriate way. So the last question I have for you, maybe second to the last, to be, because you kind of alluded to the point, and so you inspired this question, by the way, will be about financial literacy. Now, because these students tend to be in a younger phase of their life, is financial literacy a part of your program? Because I imagine that, because if I cast my mind back to when I was at that age, I probably have never seen that kind of money like that, what they'll be earning after they graduate. So they will definitely need to know how to handle money. So again, the question is financial literacy a part of your program?
I think it's an area that I want to improve on, and it's something that I'm planning to do more of in the next year. We teach the students a little bit about budgeting. From the start of the program, they have to put a very small budget together to show how much their transport money will be to get to us, and those sorts of small costs, so they get used to budgeting and planning. We teach that they learn to use Excel and how to put a more detailed budget together. And when they're doing their financial aid applications, they have to put budgets together. So I think that's sort of helping them get used to the idea of having income and what their expenses are against that income. And then when they're going off to university, we talk to them about how they will manage their money. Well, no, sorry, before university, their internships. We talk to them about how they will manage the money that they get from the internships. They're all paid internships. Some pay more than others, and how they're going to manage that money. They need to give a little bit to their families, but they need to save some. The only thing that we ask the students to pay for is their passports, if they're sufficient money from their internships. So that's one of the we like them to do something, and that's one thing that they can do. And so they have to budget so that they've got enough money for transport to get to the work. A little bit for. So we try and start them off in a sort of gradual way like that. Yeah. But I do think that it's something that I need to do more of, about what happens when they get to university, and then if they get a well-paid internship in their summer, for instance, and what do they do with that money?
Yep. Considering that, and then also with the black tax, and I mean, in that age of life, your priorities are so different, but how do you prepare them for the future? And if they intend to stay back or not stay back, they'll still need those skills anyways. And by the way, shout out to Chulu. Chulu was also very instrumental in getting some of these questions across to you. So shout out, because I reached out to her like, hey, I'm talking to Helen, and what's some questions you would like for me to ask, so I don't duplicate your own efforts on the podcast. So you've been involved in Africa now for quite a while, and through your mission, I think it's something I can tell you're passionate about it. In those, and I imagine that it hasn't been a walk in the park. There are probably some low days and some high days. What keeps you going despite all of the challenges? I'm African, and I know that sometimes we might not make some things very easy, on ourselves, and how much more on foreigners. But what keeps you going?
My students, they're just amazing. I've got the best job in the world working with them. Without a doubt, it's my students and the alumni. I've learned so much from working with them, and every student I work with, I learn more, and that I find really, really rewarding. So that's what keeps me going.
That is so sweet, Helen. I just wanted to mention that. Finally, from your experience and expertise, what strategies do you think the Zambian government can implement to help the education sector thrive in Zambia?
So I think there needs to be some whole-scale revision of the curriculum to make it more about problem-solving, critical thinking, and allowing students the space to ask questions. Even if they just did that small thing, asking questions, I think that would be really helpful.
You haven't said what we don't already. I mean, Helen, you just hit the nail on the head, right? Because I think it was the Minister of Education in Ghana who made a similar point, and we know this, we know some of these challenges is that we're not helping our students think, there's also that culture of fear. You just fear your professors. You can't even challenge some thoughts because they take it as a personal attack on their brain or whatnot. And that's a very key one. That's a very, very key one. I think he says, we have trained the children. We just want them to write down what we tell them. At the end of the day, you say you're the best student the country has ever known. Like the curriculum needs to empower the African child to ask questions and to challenge the status quo, right? Mm-hmm. And also, I think also preparing them for the marketplace, because a lot of our degrees are not translatable to the marketplace. So I think we still need that private-public partnership going on. So employers are telling the universities how to kind of because universities should not be, I feel like they should be flexible in meeting the needs of, like way back in the day, philosophy was a huge thing, and it's still very much a huge thing because you need to have some basic level of philosophy. But the way we've taught has changed overall to meet the demands of the environment we're in. And I think Africa needs to, catch up along that line. My country, Nigeria, is also a key example of that. I schooled there, and it took a while for me to be able to adjust to the US system where there's so much emphasis on your relative contribution, on your thought processes. And I found out that I was coming up short. Even though I was smart, I was coming up short. And so thanks for that reminder, Helen, is what I'm trying to say. Finally, are there some thoughts you'd like to add or points you feel like, oh, I should have said this or said that? And, or any thoughts you'd like to add as we're around up? I would like to give you some moments to just, say something, additional things you'd like to say.
I feel I've been put on the spot, and
oh my goodness, you've done the hardest part of it, and I'm like, oh no, I don't want you to feel anyhow.
No, I'm laughing about it because whenever my students are interviewed, when I'm doing interview prep with them, I always say, make sure you've got questions up your sleeve at the end. Don't ever say I've got nothing else to say. And I'm thinking, what else can I say? I think I see so much potential in Zambia. I mean, I only know Zambia, so I can't really comment on the other countries, but I'm sure it's similar in the other countries. There's so much potential, and I think people just need to believe in themselves that they're good enough, and that's one of the things that I think young people need to have that mindset that they can do it, that they can make those changes that they want to see, and they need to be empowered to be able to do that. But they can be that change. So I see a lot of opportunities. The newish now government in Zambia is making a lot of changes, I think, that are very positive and going in the right direction to empowering young people, improving technology, improving opportunities like that. So I think it's, there's a lot of positivity around, a lot of very well qualified young people, both educated abroad and at home. And so just need to harness that potential.
I don't know how that just made me tear up a little bit, maybe because of just how soothing your voice is, or just how, I don't know, but something just stirred up in me right now, and I'm a bit emotional right here. Oh. And, I mean, your passion in a good way. I think it's a good reminder, and thank you for just your passion and how that was replicated and even in your responses. Thank you for all you do through your foundation, and for the many lives you've impacted by this. And it's really just been a privilege, hearing your story and learning more about what keeps you going. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Mo. Thank you.
Yeah, and I hope you had a pleasant experience. Is there any more ways you like for us to support? Maybe come back later on to talk about certain aspects of your foundation. Please let us know. I'll be more than happy to have you back.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind. It's been really lovely having being on the show.
Thank you. And where can people find you? Do you want to talk about your social media your digital footprint? And otherwise?
Our website is www.ourmoon.org.uk. And we're on social media, on Facebook and Instagram. It's Our Moon Education. So Our Moon, OURMOON, Education. And I'm on LinkedIn as myself. We also have an Our Moon account, but we're not so active on that. Yes, people can contact me on LinkedIn if they want to talk to me. That's the easiest channel.
Well, guys, there you have it. So go find them on there. And Helen, wishing you the very best. And I hope you have a lovely, lovely weekend ahead. Thank you so much.
You too.
All right, then. Bye. Well, everyone, that was the episode. I hope you learned a lot from it, because I did too. And if there are more ways you like for us to support you on the podcast, or you'd like to come on board, don't hesitate to check our website, www.mosibyl.com. And on behalf of everyone on the show, thank you so much for listening. Catch you guys on another episode of the More Sibyl podcast. I remain your host, Mo Sibyl. Bye for now.